My biggest takeaway walking out of week one is that the SWAC doesn't have many championship contenders, but Alabama State is definitely one of them. Oh, yeah, it's locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And now, of course, I'm Darrion Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current site expert at Who Dat Dish and contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me, making Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day, every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. It just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $20 off your first purchase. We're going to run today's episode very similarly to how we ran Friday's episode, except instead of previewing the Orange Blossom Classic, we're going to review the Orange Blossom Classic, which to me was a pitiful display of offensive football. I'm going to talk about both offensive sides of the ball because FAMU, I want to give a slight credit to James Colzie. I know that sounds crazy after their performance, but I want to give him credit for something while also critiquing FAMU's offense as a whole. Thank you to Coach Scott for producing the coldest take that I have ever given on this show. And we'll expose that in segment 2 because Eden James was a non-factor in this game. And in segment 1, we kick it off with Alabama State. That sounds really similar to how we did things on Friday, right? But Bama State, I said that Andrew Body will be the biggest riser of week 1. No player, no coach, no team. I said nobody would see their stock rise the way that Andrew Body did in week 1. And mind you, we said this on Friday because they played on Thursday, and most of the HBCUs played on Saturday. I feel confident about that sitting here on Monday. But it's not just about Andrew Body, though I will say this. In a conference that doesn't have great quarterback play, having a quarterback that you trust, having a quarterback that is near the top, if not at the top of the conference, that is going to elevate you to near the top, if not the top of the conference. So when I sit here and I tell you that Alabama State is one of 2 championship contenders in the SWAC, I don't say that lightly. I also think that they're number 2. I want to be very clear. There's no 1A, 1B here. I still have Jackson State as my 1. And we'll talk about Jackson State's game versus Hampton on Wednesday. We won't be here on Tuesday. Enjoy your Labor Day. I'm dropping this obviously earlier than normal so that you can listen to this before you enjoy your Labor Day, and then I can enjoy my Labor Day without having to prep an episode to go out tomorrow morning. Also, rest my voice a little bit. Don't know if you can hear it. Hopefully you can, and hopefully you don't start listening just because I said something. But when it comes to Alabama State, go through the rest of the SWAC. It's only 1 week, so things can change. People can get better, but go through the SWAC. Coming into the season, I think a lot of us felt like it was Jackson State and everybody else. It was Jackson State and who's going to be the number 2. Will FAMU bounce back? Week 1 says no. Will Alabama State ascend? Week 1 says yes. Southern, I think, got thrust into those conversations simply because they won the SWAC West. I'm not saying that's the craziest reason, but I didn't necessarily feel like they were championship contenders. I just thought that they were a strong contender to win the West, which I don't think is that good of a division, And granted, I also was on that Trey Holly hype train. I still am. Alcorn? Come on now. Alcorn. After what they did on week 1, we gotta put a watch. We gotta put a watch on Coach Thomas. All right. You talking about beating the big teams. You need to beat the little teams. You gave a speech about being able to beat winning the what's it called? The big good teams, or however he said it. He's talking about beating the top dogs in the conference. You need to beat those guys over there because that was disappointing. PV knocked off TSU. I'm not talking about it today, but heck of a throw. Heck of a throw on that game winner. He probably killed me if I didn't say anything about it, but it just wasn't in the plans. I already knew how today was going to go. So I'm not giving it no life. Y'all get a sentence out of me. But you go through it. The SWAC isn't high on contenders. Andrew Body looked phenomenal. The offense looked phenomenal. But I'm already knowing when it comes to Alabama State and what they showed against Alabama Birmingham, anybody that pushes back against my stance that Alabama State is one of two in their second in that ranking, but they're one of two championship contenders in the SWAC, the pushback would be the defense. And I hear that. I understand that, and I get it. But I'm not all the way out on the defense yet. I'm concerned, but I'm not ready to write them off yet. This is something that I said going into the season. I think this had to be early. I think this had to be March, April. I want to play this clip. I'm wearing a jacket in this, so it's obviously a little cool. This isn't something that happened in June or July. So yeah, let's play this clip, though, because it expresses some of my concerns going into the season, and I think we saw those concerns actualized in week 1. The 2 under-the-radar moves that have the ability to cripple the identity of Alabama State. Ryan Lewis Sr., your former defensive coordinator, is now at Alabama Birmingham, and then you have James Williams, your former cornerbacks coach, who is now at Kennesaw State. The loss of these 2 men on the coaching staff, in my opinion, has the ability to cripple what Alabama State has been built up to be. Alabama State is a team, for better or worse, that is led by their defense and has questionable offense. We're still trying to see if the offense is going to get it together, but now I have questions on the defense because this was your defensive coordinator, and then I would say this is the leader of the best position group that you've had for the last couple of years when you're talking about the cornerbacks. Many would say Eddie Robinson Jr. is a defensive-minded head coach. As long as he's around, then the offense, as long as he's around, the defense will be okay. I don't know, because Eddie Robinson is a delegator. Eddie Robinson is a guy who's going to float around and make sure everybody's doing what they need to do, but he's not necessarily going to fully invest in the defensive side of the football. That's how it was presented to me when we had him on the show. He talked about his style and how sometimes it's hard for him to not interject. Does he take that restraint away now? Does he now say, I'm going to give a little bit more opinion on the defensive side of the ball, maybe even call plays? I don't know. Now, obviously, I still don't know the answer to that last part, but that was a question I had. Losing your defensive coordinator, losing your defensive backs coach. What would your defense look like? In this week, terrible. It was bad. Thought they had tackling issues. They were getting moved out of the way. But my thing is, how many offenses are going to be comparable to that? I'm not saying that UAB is the greatest thing in that conference or on the FBS level. What I'm saying is, how many SWAC schools are going to move Alabama State around like that? I don't think that that's not something you're going to see every week. The tackling issues are things that will concern me. But as far as just getting moved off your spot consistently, I don't know. Like, that's the thing that gets me, is that we'll come in here and we will bash the defense, deservedly so. But we'll bash the defense, but we won't talk about who they're actually facing. How many offensive lines are they going to face as big as that or as good as that? Or, like, these are conversations I think need to happen. And that's why I think this week coming up against Southern is a great test. It's funny. I'm not going to say I'm out on Southern more than everyone else, but they're near the group of schools that I'm like, I'm disappointed in how you've started the season. Versus Alabama State, it was like, oh, man, I'm really happy. So it's going to be really exciting. I'm pretty sure that's going to be my game of the week, so let me shut up about that. But when it comes to the defense, we need to wait and see. Should we be judging Alabama State's defense based on how they played against an FBS opponent? Yes, to a degree, but not in this is exactly who you are. I don't agree with that. But when we look at the offense and the fact that they succeeded, it does speak volumes, right? When you succeed in places you're supposed to fail, it says more. When you fail in places you're supposed to fail, it doesn't say as much. So I'm going to be patient. I'm going to wait, but I am watching because you got moved off your spot. I thought that it was tackling issues, and those are things that can come back up, specifically tackling issues. Of everything I saw against UAB, the tackling issues are the most concerning because tackling issues can pop up no matter if you're facing a D or a FBS, FCS, D2, or NAIA. Tackling issues can always pop up. But as far as offense, they got more than just body. I like Jamari Holtzclaw a lot. I don't know what his numbers are going to be in 2025, but I think he's an extremely talented running back. He ended the day with 14 carries for 54 yards. So that's not a great statistical output. But to me, I think that he is effective. And I think that's the word we should be looking for to describe his game throughout 2025, as opposed to productive. And now that sounds crazy. It almost sounds like I'm making excuses already. But when you have a quarterback like Andrew Body, who is going to run the ball a lot, who on a read option is going to take the ball a lot, you have to understand that, and they're looking to stop Body's legs. You have to understand as a running back, you're not going to get as many touches. You might not have the bulk of the rushing yards every single game. That's just how it goes. But if Holtzclaw can make effective plays, if he can make timely plays, he might not have 150 yards. He might not have 100 and he might not cross the century mark in multiple games, but he'll be effective in those. That's what I'm looking for out of him. And I think he's extremely talented. So I was happy to see him bounce back quickly from the injury at the end of last season, but definitely one of my favorite running backs in the conference. Then on the receiving core, you have guys like Jalen Jones. You have Ajay Harrell. I thought that Harrell was, to me, the guy who in the first half at least was very dependable. He was the guy that I was looking forward to seeing I was looking forward to seeing in the second half, but then Jalen Jones ended up teeing up. But I was excited about what Harrell would do because Harrell was the guy who kept popping up, making plays on the sideline. I'm like, we talking about Andrew Body, but it's his chemistry with this Harrell guy. Okay, this is something to talk about. This is something to look at. But yeah, Jai Harrell, Jalen Jones, two guys who I think are very talented on the outside. They got some guys on that offense. They really do. It's not just Andrew Body. But Jackson State, Alabama State. Who else is looking like a contender? And I will leave room for other people to join this conversation. I'm not saying it's going to be stagnant, but right now it only looks like two. As we continue moving forward, though, we're going to take a look at Howard and Florida A&M, but specifically Howard, because I cannot believe that Eaton James was such a non-factor. I can't believe it, but we'll break it down and why that's unacceptable as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Check out the Game Time app. If you're going anywhere, it doesn't have to be a sporting event. It could be a Monster Jam. I don't think that counts as sports. It could be a ballet. It could be a theater play. It could be a concert. I love looking for my concert tickets on there. Doesn't matter what it is. When you're talking about tickets to get into any event, Game Time is the way to go. Simple and plain. Game Time offers you the best prices. They have zone deals for my indecisive people who say, I want to sit around there, but I can't pick my one place. Boom. Just tell them where you want to sit in the region, and they'll get one for you. It's that simple. Simple and plain. All right? Let's not make things more complicated than they have to be. I was buying tickets from Game Time to go to the Dallas Wings matchup just 2 weeks ago. So follow my suit. And if you're new to Game Time, you can get $20 off your first purchase. That is Locked On College using the code Locked On College to get $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time app today. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, make sure you're checking out Locked On NFL because they have the biggest week coming up. Thursday, first game of the season. Saturday or Friday, game in Brazil. Sunday, we have all of the full slate of action for the first time. This is heaven. All right, I cannot wait. Tell your partner if they're not a football fan, I'm sorry, but this is our time. All right. Eaton James was a non-factor. And I have a little bit of an issue with this. This is the coldest take that I have ever given. I came on here, and because of the Alabama State game, I had to change the way that I did things on Friday because I wanted to highlight Alabama State as soon as possible. So then we came in with 3 matchups, but we didn't have a key to victory. Instead, I highlighted a key matchup that I thought would decide this game. And I said it was Eden James versus the FAMU front seven. I thought that, and this is the coldest take I feel like I've ever given, at least the one that frosted the quickest. But Eden James versus the FAMU front seven being the biggest key matchup in the Orange Blossom Classic, only for James to have 5 carries for 8 yards. And listen, that's not a great output per carry. I'm not here to make excuses. But you can't tell me that Eden James wasn't supposed to have more than 5 carries. Matter of fact, in that take, I said, yeah, we need to make sure that James gets more touches than he did last year. Yet again, he had less than 10 touches. To me, that's unacceptable. And it's not even like, oh, that's just how the game went. They were trailing. They were coming from behind. No, they weren't. It's not, oh, well, this guy had the hot hand. That's not how it went. That's not. When you go through and you look at the original or the very beginning of the game, there was a clear stance of who their down in, down back was going to be for the Bison. It was. And I'm beginning to feel like Coach Johnson, I'm beginning to feel like Coach Scott just doesn't view Eden James as an every down back. Here's the thing. I thought it was a breakout season on the way. I've spent a decent amount of the offseason saying this, but I have been feeling like Eden James was due for a breakout season. Clearly, Coach Scott doesn't agree with me. Clearly. Because you look at the beginning of the game, and from the jump, Travis Kearney is getting way more carries. From the jump, I think Kearney might have had 4 carries on that first drive. Nah, he had 2 carries on the first drive. I think they actually went 3 and out on that first drive, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, they went 3 and out. But he had 3 carries in the first quarter. Eden James had 5 carries all game. Now, think about it. Eden James, 5'10", 185. 180, 185, somewhere around that range. Ian Wheeler, Jared Hunter, they're both 205 pounds. Want to guess how much Travis Kearney weighs? Excuse me. So it could be that Eden James simply does not measure up to what Coach Scott believes an every down running back is. Because when it comes to passing downs, when it comes to 2-minute drills, you want to know who right next to Starks in the backfield? Eden James. They're treating him like a change of pace running back. I felt like this was the year that he finally stepped up and became the guy. I felt like this was the year that he stepped up and became the leading running back. And it sounds like James thought that as well. But as we go through the beginning of the game, not just, in the third quarter, we started rolling with the hot hand. From the very beginning, Howard prioritized Travis Kearney over Eden James. Period. Like, that's not even up for debate. Because who was getting the first quarter carries? Kearney gets, oh my gosh, I've been calling him Kearney. I apologize. It is Kearney. I am so sorry. But Kearney gets 3 rushes in the first quarter. 3 of them. Eden James gets 1. Then he gets 3 in the second. Gets 1 in the third. So like, to me, that's an issue. Because week 1, game 1, first quarter, you're supposed to be rolling with your stars. You're supposed to be rolling with the the leaders of your team. Clearly, that doesn't include Eden James. Like I said, I thought we was on the way for a breakout season. Clearly, I was wrong. 5 carries isn't going to cut it. And I feel like Jay Walker, where is Eden James? Excuse me. That's what he kept saying towards the end. And Eden James popped up. They used him in a receiving capacity. They have him credited for three catches for 21 yards. But on that last drive, they shorted him on 1 catch. They credited it to somebody else. But it was Eden James who caught that ball out the backfield for 11 yards. So it should have been 4 carries or 4 catches for 32 yards. In my opinion, you've seen him keep making plays. Just get the ball in his hand. That's it. Just get the ball in his hands. I don't care if it's passing the ball. I don't care if it's running the ball. But Eden James having less than 10 touches is crazy to me at this point. You don't have a Jared Hunter that's stealing carries from him. You don't have an Ian Wheeler and Jared Hunter that's stealing carries from him. Why are we not getting the ball to Eaton James? To me, that's poor game planning. It'd be one thing if your offense was doing well, but they weren't. The offense was struggling. The offense was anemic. The offense couldn't get much going. And on that drive that you had to kick the game-winning field goal, guess who was making some big plays? Earlier in the game, when you're on a 3rd and 5, you flank him out wide. He catches the ball. He stops short about 2 yards, 1.5 yards. Guess who has the forethought to say, I'm going to turn around and reach this ball out? Right? Like, these are the plays he made when you gave him the ball. On that last drive, shook two people, one on each catch in order to get the first down. And when you're in the last minute or last 2 minutes of the game or last 2 minutes of the first half, these plays are large because these are the plays that allow you to stop the clock. Remember, college football changed the rules. There's no more just stopping the clock on every first down until you get to the last 2 minutes. So if he gets that first down, as opposed to getting stopped at, after a 7-yard gain, look at the benefit. Look at the benefit. It's these type of small plays, but I just don't understand. I don't. To me, he is one of your stars, and I just do not get why they would not roll with him. Doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't. But one thing that did make sense, and I did appreciate, is James Colzie sticking with R.J. Johnson. I know R.J. Johnson did not have a good game. I didn't think Starks did either. We got to improve that, Howard. But I don't think R.J. Johnson had a good game. But I do think that Colzie deserves some credit for sticking with his guy. And I'm going to explain why as we close out today's episode of Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by Rugiet. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis, and maybe even tried them. But if you're looking for something that goes beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Ready. Listen to the name. Rugiet is ready for you. And I hope that you're ready for Rugiet as well, because they are a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. And when it's time to, you need both of those. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rugiet's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average 15 minutes. And the effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. Head to Rugiet.com/LockedOnCollege and use the code LockedOnCollege to get 15% off today. That's Rugiet.com/LockedOnCollege and use the code LockedOnCollege for 15% off today. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit Rugiet website for full safety information. As wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, making it all the way to segment 3. And I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad that James Colzie didn't pull R.J. Johnson. I really am. And I know that this is something that not a lot of people are going to agree with, but that's okay. That's why I'm here on my show by myself, standing on 10. I think it was the right call to not pull R.J. Johnson. Now, does that mean you roll with him next week? It doesn't. But I think that if you're an everydayer who's been here for a long time, you know how I feel about hot potato quarterbacks. Oh, we're going to go with this guy, and we're going to go with this guy. And I think when you feel like you have multiple guys who can start, it's easy to say this one's playing poor, so let's switch over to this guy. It's easy to say that. But for me, I just can't co-sign it. It gets tiresome to me because I don't feel like you're allowing them to learn from their mistakes. And I was glad that Coach Colzie had enough comfort to say we're living and dying with R.J. Johnson, at least for this week. Because to me, it's better for the long-term development. And no one ever wants to hear that, especially Colzie and FAMU fans who I feel like are already getting upset with Colzie. I'm not saying he's on the hot seat, but they're definitely upset. They're definitely grinding their teeth. They're definitely not happy with the performances or with the results. So I know it's difficult to sit here and talk about long-term development, but I think that R.J. Johnson is better for it. I think RJ Johnson, who ran for a first down and got up hitting his chest, is better for it. I think that RJ Johnson, who had 2 long completions towards the back end of that game, is better for it. I don't know if it means that they'll roll with him or they'll go to Petty next week, but you have to let quarterbacks take their bumps. You do, right? I use this as a point of reference all the time. But the Saints are going through their own quarterback battle, or they were going through their own quarterback battle. And one of the things that Coach Moore always talks about is how do you respond to adversity? How do you respond to mess ups, right? Because do you have a mistake and then you go into a shell of yourself, or do you make a mistake and then bounce back? And to me, it wasn't necessarily a mistake. It was just an all around poor performance by RJ Johnson. And RJ Johnson popped back at the end of the game. See, here's the thing. Is FAMU's offense was bad. They were bad. But you go into the end of that game and you look at the final drives, and I could make an argument that they were starting to turn things around. The biggest problem is they could never punch it in. But you go through FAMU's drives, right? 5 for 15, 7 for 27, back-to-back 3 and outs. Right, so that's the first 4 drives. Then you get a field goal right before halftime. You don't really have any time before that. But you have 4 punts and a field goal in the first half. Now you get to the second half, punt, but you get field goal attempt, field goal. So you got the first field goal blocked. But what I'm seeing is an offense that struggled to get anything together in the last 3 drives. RJ Johnson helped lead them to scoring territory. And if I got to say it, when RJ Johnson got them down there at the end of the game, they started running the ball. They ran the ball 3 straight times after RJ Johnson threw a beautiful corner pass to get him in the 1st and goal. And what do? They run the ball 3 times, get nothing, kick a field goal. They end up losing. I'm just saying, I'm trying to put it all out there. But I think that RJ Johnson had a big 30-yard completion over the middle on 3rd and 19. That was in the second to last drive, if I'm not mistaken. He had a really pretty – what's that? Let me make sure that was him and not Starks, because I thought both of them played poorly, but I thought both of them made some big throws towards the end. Yeah, okay, so that was Johnson. Johnson had a big throw, 30 yards in the 4th quarter, 3rd and 19, gotta have it moment. You down by – I think at that point you were down by 4. You're down by 4 at that time. Gotta have it, and he delivers. You look at another play, 26-yard corner route. That wasn't on 3rd down. Oh, that was on 3rd down. So that's what I'm saying. RJ Johnson did not have a good game, but I do want to salute James Colzie for not taking him out, because it would have been easy to do. But I think that you see the development. You see the guy who runs for the first down and actually begins to use his legs. You see a guy who takes the snap that rolls behind him. He gathers it, throws it away with a level of composure that I don't think that he had early in the game. You see the guy who on 3rd and 19 delivers a nice throw for 30 yards. On 3rd and 10, he delivers a throw for 26. Is this enough to save his job next week? I don't know. But I do think giving quarterbacks the opportunity to bounce back like this is important. It's important. And RJ Johnson showed me he could do it, but he didn't show me he could get into the end zone. He didn't show me, or they didn't show me, that they could get down in the scoring position instead of kicking a field goal, kick an extra point. They didn't show me that. They improved. They got in the field goal position 3 times in the last 3 drives, as opposed to 1 time with their first 7. Right? So I think that should count for something, but you got to be better. That has to be a sign of things to come. That can't be a sign of, oh, we figured some things out towards the end of the game. We need to figure some things out for the season. That's what you should be looking for if you're FAMU. That's what I would be looking for. So I salute to James Colzie, but you're going to have to figure out a way to make those last 3 drives be your first 3 drives and then start building into some touchdowns. You have to do it pretty quickly. So I appreciate you rolling with me. I'll see y'all on Wednesday to talk about Jackson State and championship culture that was exemplified at the end of that game. And the way that they put Hampton away tells you everything you need to know about Jackson State. Just wait until Wednesday for me to tell you about it. In the meantime, in between time, and then we're going to do a SWAC whip around. So be looking for it. In the meantime, in between time, until next time that we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.